Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about reasons why Guy Busick and James Vanderbilt should never, ever, ever write another Scream movie part 2. So, originally this video was supposed to be about something that has to do with a plot hole from Scream 5 that kind of gets answered slightly in Scream 7, but not really, and causes more questions. And that's the distance between Woodsboro, California, and Pine Grove, Indiana. Like, how did Sydney get to Woodsboro so fast in Scream 5? And then how did one of the three killers in Scream 7 gets from Pine Grove to Woodsboro back to Pine Grove and everything? Considering the distance and the times and how many days it would take, this and that. So that's originally what this video was supposed to be about. But then as I rewatched Scream 5, my frustrations and questions came back as to why did this happen? Why did that happen? Why did this happen? And it got to the point where I'm like, you know what? I'll just make a part 2 of a video I made not too long ago about how these two guys should never, ever, ever, ever write another Scream movie, especially that of Guy Busick, because he's written the last 3, or co-wrote, I should say. In Scream 7, he co-wrote it with Kevin Williamson. In Scream 5 and Scream 6, he co-wrote it with James Vanderbilt. And it's one of those things the way I said last time, that these two writers, for whatever reason, leave out so much logic. They leave out throwaway lines that could explain so much. And I don't understand why it was so freaking hard for them to write Scream movies, because there's 2 of them and everything. And maybe there was just too many cooks in the kitchen. But it's the weird little things that they leave out or that they added into the movie that just makes no sense to me. And I wish, there were more confident writers and stuff. And I hate to rag on them, but I'm not the only person who feels this way. There are other people in the Scream fandom that have the same legit questions. And most of these questions you have to answer on your own by thinking outside the box. But the problem is, sometimes you don't like thinking outside the box because you could be wrong and everything. And, just one throwaway line can really help solve everything. And I've seen some people try to defend their writing, but no, there's just no excuse for bad writing and everything. And that's literally where we have, as a fandom, have gotten to bad writing and stuff. Because the last 3 movies have really lacked in certain areas, whether it's plot, whether it's characters, killer reveals and stuff like that. And the other 4 movies, they didn't really have that problem when Kevin was writing them, or that other guy in Scream 3. And don't get me wrong, Scream 3 is not perfect by no means, but there are a lot of elements in that movie that are extremely good and everything, and are a bit logical. But, it's just, this is one of my gripes. And so this is part 2 of me ranting and stuff. And so I might as well kick the video off with how this originally was, supposed to start and everything. So both locations are fictional, but they're in real states. And it is 2,274 miles in between both of them. Now, Dewey asked Sydney in Scream 5, what's it like? How is it up there? Well, here's the thing. Indiana is not above California. If you look directly at the map, it's to the east of it. If you're actually in California, it is to the west. And so, but that's because at Scream 5, they didn't really know where Sydney would be. 2 years later, or not 2 years, but many years later, 5 years later to be exact, they decided, okay, we're going to put her in Indiana. So that means that Sydney and also the killer from Scream 7, when they went back to Woodsboro and everything, if they were to drive by car, it would take approximately 33 hours and 21 minutes. So that's about like what? 2 days and no, wait. That's that's 1 day and a couple of hours and stuff. So that's 1 day and a couple of hours. And so, okay, maybe Sydney drove for like that long, you know what I'm saying? And also, maybe the killer from Scream 7 drove that long as well, and then drove back. Which makes kind of sense because, you know, whoever the killer was in the opening kill would have to go there, stop, rest, everything, then drive back. And if it was Carl, he had enough time to drive, right? Now, if you go by bus, which would be really stupid, it would take 62 hours and 25 minutes. That's about 2 days and a couple of hours. And Sydney got there extremely fast. She got there like literally the very next day in that morning after Dewey died that night. Now, as for Carl, maybe, who knows, you know what I'm saying, if it was Carl and stuff. But the most logical explanation is Sydney took a plane, which takes 4 hours and 15 minutes. She had plenty of time and she took a plane and flew there and, you know, stuff like that. But what about the killer in the opening kill? Here is the problem with, well, kind of the problem with this. If it was Jessica or Marco, if they were to be gone for either a day, 2 days, or at least like about 8 hours or so, then, oh wait, I didn't think about the time after that. So let's see. If they went by car, then they would have been gone for at least, 2.5 days, close to 3. If they went by bus, then they would have been gone for at least, about 6 days or so. But if they took a plane, they would have been gone for anywhere between like 10 hours or so, 10, 12, half that day's time. So there's no way it can be Jessica or Marco, because in all that time, people will be wondering, where are they at? Jessica's a mother and Marco has a job. But then again, what about Carl and everything? Well, here's the thing about that. There's no way that Carl could take a plane because he's an escape mental patient. So he could never get on a plane because you got to have ID or a passport and everything. And the moment they ran his name through, they would have known he escaped. Most likely he did not take a bus because it would take way too long to, like, you know, get there and back. Most likely he took a car and he drove there. But here's the thing, whose car did he take? Couldn't have been Jessica because she needs hers. Can't be Marco because he needs his to work unless he took the bus. Or maybe he just stole one. So most likely Sydney got there by plane and Marco got there by just like a means of a car, if that's really what happened. Another thing I don't understand is, like, after Dewey died that night, Gail didn't find out until the morning. And so it makes me stop and think, why wasn't she contacted sooner? The people of Woodsboro know those two used to be married. They know that, like, Dewey used to not only be a cop, but the sheriff over there. So you think, since, you know, Gail would be like his next of kin, why wouldn't they have contacted her sooner so she can come there at night instead of finding out in the morning? And more importantly than that, how in the world did Sydney find out? Sydney has not spoken to either Gail or Dewey in a number of years. Since it's about 11 years in between Scream 4 and Scream 5, let's just assume it's somewhere between 5 to like 10. And Sydney literally has not spoken to Gail until she meets up with her in Scream 5. When she tells her, I heard about Dewey and everything. That morning when like Gail showed up all of a sudden all conveniently and stuff. And, maybe it made world news. You know what I'm saying? Because the Ghostface killings are pretty famous, and so are the stab movies. So it probably made like world news or something like that. And that's probably how Sydney found out. But we really and truly do not know, because Gail never told her, because Gail literally didn't find out. And when they both met up, they didn't, you can tell they have not spoken. And I think that literally said, they haven't like spoken a long time. It wasn't Sam, because her and Sydney don't talk or know each other. It might have been the twins and their mom. But here's the odd thing about the twins and Martha. They act like they're not that close with Sydney. You rarely ever see them interact. 2 movies now, and the twins barely say anything to Sydney. In fact, I don't even think the twins had a line of dialogue with Sydney in Scream 5. In Scream 7, they still barely spoke to her and stuff. So I don't think she's that close with them, because why would she be closer with the twins and not Dewey and Gail, who she has a closer relationship with, after so many years, but them moving on with their lives and completely separated and no longer talk. So who in the world told Sydney? Tatum's age still does not make no sense. So when it comes to Sydney girls, this thing has literally been retconned like immensely, it feels like, from Scream 5, along with the 2 different marks. So in Scream 5, Dewey calls Sydney for the first time in many, many years, anywhere between 5 to 10. When he's talking to Sydney, he asked, what is she doing? And she said that she was about to drop the girls off to school. Now, here's the thing. The type of stroller she has is for 2 kids, which made people assume it's twins. We do find out that it is twins in Scream 7, because 2 completely different girls that are twins in real life play the 2 younger girls. My bad, in my review, I thought it was 1 girl playing 2 girls because the way the camera kept moving. But it is indeed 2 girls, and they are actually actresses who star in other things. Now here's the strange thing. Most people put infants in strollers, or anywhere between the age of 1, 2, 3 at the most. Now, from Scream 5 to Scream 7, that's been 5 years. And yeah, the girls do look like they're around 5 years old, so that makes sense. But here's the thing. Sydney literally said, I was about to drop the girls off at school. Little infants don't go to school. Maybe daycare, but why would they make that huge mistake and say daycare and not school? So that completely threw people off. And originally it was stated that she might have had older twin girls, and they might do a time jump in Scream 7, but they did not do that. Instead, they just gave her 1 older daughter named Tatum. Tatum's age makes literally no sense. Every Scream movie takes place in the year it comes out. So, Scream 7 came out in 2026. Tatum is 17 years old, which means she was born in 2009, which means that happened before the events of Scream 4. This really makes absolutely no sense. There was no mention she was married. There was no mention she had kids, because those were completely different writers at that time, and they was going through a different trilogy. The fact that these two writers bumbled that so badly is embarrassing and stuff. And it's their three movies that they continue with this whole like Sydney daughters thing, or girls, I should say. Because most likely there was no Tatum 17 years old when Scream 5 and Scream 6 came out. Most likely it was the two girls, but they probably didn't want two little girls running from like killers and everything, because, parents would have complained. And they would have had to have a higher rating than an R rating. And they don't want that because they want butts in the seats. But this is a huge fumble by both of the writers, or at least Guy Busick, because James wasn't a part of Scream 7. And so it is kind of weird that in between Scream 3 and Scream 4, like, they gave Sydney a child who's now 17 and before the events of Scream 4. That's just so weird and everything, and it's just kind of, I don't like that. The two confusing marks. So, in Scream 5, the writers, directors decided to have an Easter egg by saying Sydney was married to Mark. And most people assume it's Mark Kincaid, because there's only one Mark in the Scream franchise. Nev originally had no idea that was an Easter egg until she remembered Scream 3, and even Patrick Dempsey said, there could only be one, and it must be him. Even the directors literally said, or writers, I can't remember which one, said it is Mark from Scream 3. But scheduling conflict caused him to not be a part of Scream 7. And I do wonder now if it's scheduling conflict, because we heard the same thing with Jenna Ortega, and apparently that was not the case. And so they decided to create a completely different Mark, who just so happens to be a cop. And same as the original one. But here's the thing. In Scream 5, Dewey asks her, how's Mark? And she literally responds with, I like him, I think I'll keep him, and everything. That one line of dialogue can go either way. I see, if it was originally the Mark from Scream 3, well, if she likes him and thinks she'll keep him, she's already known him for, God, how long has it been? 20 years? 15? Something like that. Since Scream 3 came out, and I forgot what year that was, but from Scream 3 to Scream 4 has been about 10 or 11 years, and from Scream 4 to 5 is about another 10 to 11 years. So that's been about 20 years. So all this time she realized she likes him and gonna keep him? She couldn't figure that out before. And so it makes me think they did not have that hammered out completely. And I don't really believe it was the original Mark, because that one line of dialogue just doesn't make no sense. Not to mention, so she's been dating him since 2009, got knocked up, but didn't decide to get married to him until around Scream 5. I know a lot of people do that nowadays instead of getting married and starting a family, but I don't know, man. That just makes Sydney just seem kind of, you know. But one of the biggest pet peeves in the fandom is just relying on nostalgia way too much. One of the things about 5, 6, and 7 is that they rely too heavily on nostalgia. You got Scream 7 recreating the bedroom scene with the final girl and the boyfriend. You have Scream 5 just completely ripping off, like, oh, the boyfriend is like, the killer, and, and stuff like that. And, you know, and just like giving people names, like, you have Sam and Tara's mother being named Christina. That might sound random unless you go back to Scream 1 and you see Sydney in the hallway and there's a girl running with dark hair talking about, I think it's like, hey, Christina, wait up, or something like that. And so fans have theorized, could that be the Christina? You know what I'm saying? And you don't really see her face, so that doesn't have to be a problem if they had to cast Christina in the future. But then there is, like, the twins and them having the last name Martin. And with the actor Joel, the actor name is Duncan Martin and stuff like that. And then there are the two Marks. Like, they just, saw in Scream 3, oh, Sydney kind of like this flirtmance with like the cop who's much older than her. And like they're like, okay, let's just like have her be married to him and have kids. And I'm like, the dude is like way older than her and everything. And it's just kind of like they got knocked up before Scream 4, but didn't get married till about 10, 11 years later. So it's kind of like the nostalgia is kind of like, it's a bit too much. And then there's the whole Mindy dressing just like Randy and acting way worse than Randy and more cringeworthy than Randy. And it's just kind of like the nostalgia didn't have to play that freaking hard. Why was Sam so rude to Sydney? That don't make no sense. She met Gail, she was nice to Gail. Met Dewey, nice to Dewey. The moment she met Sydney, it was just like pure spite and like hatred that came from her. But why? She's never met Sydney. Yes, Sydney killed her dad, but her dad was a psycho killer. So it's never been explained why Sam had this stain towards Sydney for no apparent reason. Because for the most part, Sam acted really nice to everybody in that movie until she met Sydney. Amber seems to be the only person, not only in the friend group, that knows that Sam is Billy's daughter, but the only person in town. Nobody else in town seems to know the connection between Sam and Billy. Yet Amber in the climax, or maybe I think it was the third act climax, said that, it's a small town and your mom's a drunk. Meaning that Christina Carpenter will get drunk and spill the beans about her family. And so most likely either like told Amber, which why would she be drinking with a young person, or drinking with Amber's mom, and Amber's mom told Amber. But how come nobody else seemed to know? How come Amber wouldn't tell her friend group or tell Tara? Like, why would she tell a complete stranger online? How come nobody else in town seems to know this? Like, not one stinking person. This is just the weirdest writing I've ever seen. And I'm sorry, but 3 strikes from me and Guy Busick should be out. Making the new group in Scream 5 like not even really feel like Friends. I debated if I was gonna do a ranking of the Friends group in the Scream franchise. Because, there's always a friend group, I can't talk, goop, a friend group. And like, for the most part, they vibe really well. There's Scream 3 where they weren't friends, they were co-workers. But even they had like a vibe. It was an antagonistic vibe, but nevertheless. But then when I stop and I look at Scream 5, I think to myself, not only do their friendship feel kind of forced, it just doesn't even feel there. Like, the only time you really see them interact with each other is during the part where they're being kind of like questioned and, by Dewey and Sam. Then, of course, the party. Like, Tara and Amber are supposed to be best friends, but how often do you really see them interact in the movie and speak to each other? You have Wes, who's kind of just there. You have Liv, who's just dating Chad and also is kind of just there. And then you have Mindy, who doesn't really interact with any of them. And when she does interact with Amber, it's like, to question her about the rules of going down in the basement. And then they kind of like get into a bit of an argument. Same thing with Liv. They get into an argument with Mindy as well. And it's just kind of like, are you sure they're friends? Because they don't really seem to vibe with one another. And it's one of those things the way if you pull one of them out and partner them with another person in the friend group, do they vibe? No. But the good thing about Scream 6 is that the core 4 now feel like actual friends. But it's like, okay, you separate the group and it's because they're siblings and everything. So they vibe on a sibling level, but not an actual friend level. So, you know what I'm saying? Some people's ages don't make no sense. So, there's already the whole Tatum thing. Like being born before the events of Scream 4, which is still to this day pisses me off, but whatever. But now you have that of Tara. So Tara, or Tara, I can't remember which one it is. In 2022, she was 18 and she was about to turn 19. So it says on her wristband she was born in 2002. However, she should have been born in 2003 if she's technically 19-ish in that year frame and everything. Since she's turning 19, she would have been born in 2003. If she was just like fully 18 and not turning 19, then she would have been like, born in 2004. I forget what month, Scream 5 takes place, but like something's just not adding up. Like how hard is that just to do some basic math? You know what I'm saying? Speaking of friends group, where are all of Sam's friends and why couldn't the movie just revolve around them? It turns out that Sam's friends are all Tara friends, but Sam is 5 to 6 years older than all of them, which means let's just predict this. Let's pretend that Sam is a freshman in high school. That means all her friends are still in elementary. Like at least in the 4th grade. What kind of weird friend group is this? But we know she babysitted them, but still. It's just like she couldn't find nobody her own age except for like Richie and stuff. So that's just weird writing right there. But no, of course, they wanted to have like a really young cast and they wanted somehow to tie this into the original. Still a little weird and bizarre if you ask me. Even weirder is the Meek twins never blaming Gail or Sydney for Randy's death. Now we know that Mindy loves herself some Randy, even so much as dressing very similar to him in Scream 5 during the party scene. Like if you look at the part where she's on the couch and her outfit is the same color pattern as like Randy's and stuff. And so you would think that at some point in time, to make the twins seem like suspects and everything, you would think that they would, question Sydney or Gail, be all like, the reason why our uncle is dead is because of you two. He followed Sydney around like a puppy in college and stuff, and also high school, and got on the radar of all the killers. Then he answered Gail's phone. That was her phone call. That was supposed to be her death. But he answered the phone and pissed off Mrs. Loomis and everything. So you gotta think, he would have been alive still to this day if that never happened. So it would have been nice to have some type of scene where one of them is upset and kind of blame either Sydney or like Gale and everything. But yet you don't get that. And not only do you not get that, you really don't get no engagement between the twins, Gale and Sydney. Because like they rarely speak to Sydney and they work for Gale, but how often do they really talk to Gale? Like an actual real conversation. Not just, okay, let's throw them in the seventh movie and then have them say something quirky that's unrelated really to whatever it is that, I guess going on with Gale at that point in time. Where is everybody at the hospital? Like when Tara was getting attacked. The entire hallway was empty. Like, that didn't make no sense. There are no cops. In fact, the cop left his duty to go and, see what happened to Judy after she got attacked and everything. Why did he leave his station? And where are all the like hospital employees and everything? There wasn't a single person in that hallway except for like one dead person, and that's it. This is reminding me of The Strangers Part 2. Like, the hospitals now all of a sudden in slasher movies are completely empty. This didn't make no sense whatsoever, and it should never have been written this way. Ripping off the Halloween movies. Okay, so Scream has always been an homage to like that of Halloween that came out many, many decades ago. The white mask, the stalking of teens, the knife, stuff like that. But it's always, also the closet scene with the umbrella. It's always been an homage for the most part, never a direct ripoff. But starting with like Scream 5, it started to be a ripoff. Halloween did the requel, now Scream 5 did the whole requel thing as well, calling itself just Scream. Or some people like to call it Scream 2022. But for the most part, it's just called Scream, placing over that the original movie. And, the plots and motivations and stuff like that. Not so much a direct copy from the first, but a modified version and everything, Then here comes the second movie, Scream 6 and the new requel trilogy and everything, with the tattered, torn mask that's molding and decaying, very similar to Mike Myers' mask. And that was the biggest ripoff of all stinking time. When you saw the decayed mask. And it's kind of like, where's the originality? Other movies used to copy Scream. Now Scream is copying other movies. I mean, you have the whole like Sydney and Laurie thing, which feels so identical now. The new Scream movies take place like decades later from the original, just like Halloween. Sydney is kind of like Laurie Strode to the point where she fortified her house. Not exactly the way that Laurie did, but she has the crawl space, the security alarms. She has like the safe room, tons of guns and everything. And even the kill at the bar is so out of like a Halloween or a Friday the 13th type movie with the beer tap thing, like that's not even a Ghostface type kill. Maybe in the television show, yes. In the television show, they got very creative. But like in a Scream franchise, movie-wise, they don't kill people like that. And so it's starting to feel almost like a direct ripoff of like the requel thing of like, Halloween and everything. And not only that, but then you have to think about Sam and whoever Laurie Strode's granddaughter and like, that one dude from the Halloween Ends. Because Sam contemplated, am I evil? Am I like my dad? The way she stabs people 20 times and everything, And it's like, it reminds me of those two characters from like that other franchise. And it was something else? I can't think of. Oh, and also Sydney has like a daughter, and Lori now has a daughter, another daughter, because there are three different continuities and stuff. And so it's starting to get to the point where it's just a blatant ripoff now. I mean, heck, even Scary Movie 6 referenced that with Cindy and stuff. Killer reveal slash motivation. So, one of the problems in the last three Scream movies is the killer reveals and their motivations. People generally have a problem with all three movies. The toxic people hate that Scream made fun of them because the killers were toxic. Aside from that, but here's the thing, the whole requel thing. Amber and Richie, like, they feel as though the original is the best and trying to remake it is like wrong, but you know, a requel is the way to do it, blah, 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 right? But it's kind of like if they like the original so much, why aren't they keeping Sydney alive? And why aren't they trying to make the requel with Sydney? Why in the world are they making it with Tara? Not Tara, but Sam. Like, you know, a person who only connection is that she's the daughter of Billy and everything. Like, because people did not know that. And of course, eventually it probably would have got out if they would have succeeded in killing her and this and that. But why don't they worship her? Because she is the daughter of Billy. And shouldn't they also worship that of Sydney and stuff? And but they never once went after Sydney. And the whole thing about the stab movies is about Sydney and stuff until the last fourth movie, where like she didn't want nobody using her likeness or her story no more. So it's just kind of weird that they wanted to create a requel when, let's face it, requels suck. They just do, okay? Like, I wish Hollywood would stop with them and everything. Like, Scream 5, the new Halloween movies, and of course, I know what you did last summer, the 2025 one. They just all suck. So if they suck so bad, why in the world would these two who love the original and love horror movies and love movies in general, why would they want to create a requel for? And then you have like, you know, Scream 6, which they just took the whole parent revenge thing from the second movie. Yes, still rules of a requel, that's how the second movie was. But it was like, try something a little different, you know what I'm saying? And the whole Quinn faking the death thing was just weird. And all they had to do was a simple Google search to tell that they're related to that of Richie. And now comes Scream 7. And Scream 7 has the worst killer reveals ever. To the point where you don't know why two of them are doing what they're doing, and you get the reason why one of them is doing it, and it's a pretty cool reason, but there wasn't enough scenes with her to like justify this reveal. And now there's a reason for that. Anna Camp has literally now went on the record and said there was no plan. She got offered the role by Kevin Williamson. She came in and there was barely any scenes with her, and she had to keep telling the like producers and director and writers and all this to add more scenes, you know, because if her character was going to be like the killer. And they added that one scene where Gail shows up and she's standing outside and stuff like that. And not only that, but she had to come up with everything about the killer reveal, the backstory, the motivation. She even had to come up with the reason as to why she could care less about her son dying. And not only that, but she never said her character killed her son. You know, she just said there had to be a reason as to why she could care less about like Ghostface killing her son. And so that tells me right then and there, Jessica did not kill her son, which I knew that because there's no way she can pick him up and put him on the beer tap and everything. But she had to come up with everything within 2 days in her hotel room because the writer did not. And it's just kind of like, this is why this dude should not never be hired again. Another huge problem I'm having with these two is in Scream 6 when it comes to the shrine. The shrine is amazing. I love the shrine, right? Somebody went and stole all this police evidence from all the murders, from all the years, and put it in a shrine. Whoever has this must be the most obsessed, like, stab fan and obsessed, like, Woodsboro murders fan, like, ever. You know what I'm saying? Like, what dedication. And so, like, this should have been a moment for Sydney, not a bunch of newcomers. This should have been for Gail, Sydney, and Dewey, but Dewey died, of course. So it should have been for Gail and Sydney. Instead, what do we have? We have a bunch of newcomers embracing, I can't talk, embracing the shrine, you know, walking through its like mythology and everything. How is this supposed to be triggering for them? And that's the thing of the shrine. The shrine is supposed to be awe and amazement for us fans, but it's supposed to be triggering for the legacy characters. Yet, I think there was only one legacy character there, and Gail was unfazed. You know what I'm saying? And so this really should have been Sydney's moment. Sydney has lived through all of this freaking crap. You know what I'm saying? Like, she has dealt with it. She has fought off the Ghostface killers. All these costumes, all these robes, all these masks, all these buck knives, that has trauma written all over it for her. This should have been like the moment she walked through it, her hand should have been shaking. Like, you know, she can't be strong all the time. Like, her nerves should have got to her. You know what I'm saying? Instead, it was a bunch of newbies who, when you look at all of them, including Kirby, they only have 2 Scream movies under their belt. You know, well, now Mindy and Chad have 3 now, but you know what I'm saying? But it's kind of like, for the most part, they've only survived 1.5 Ghostface killings. And so looking at all this history, it's like going through a museum for them, you know what I'm saying? But it's not something they truly lived through other than that last attack. And this should have been, like, you think it's going to leave something huge, something big, a revelation. And it's Richie's shrine, you know. Richie's a huge, like, you know, stab movie fan, and his dad collected it for him, and that would have been okay, but it should have been Sydney's moment. But of course, Nev was not there because of the pay dispute and stuff like that. But, you know, it should have been a much bigger thing. Like, it really, really, really should have. A similar thing is Stu's freaking house. How do you drop the freaking ball on that? When we saw his house in the trailer, fans lost their freaking minds. I lost my mind. It's like, how? What? Why? Why are they back in his house? Like, what brought them there? What led them there? You know what I'm saying? Like, what is the huge significance of it? And the thing is that you go throughout the entire movie and you still don't know why. We see Stu's nephew there, but he gets killed early on in the movie. So it's not his house. So it's like, well, why is the freaking house there? Then we find out in the 3rd act, Amber lives there with her family now when they had like the party. And it's kind of like, okay, she is Ghostface. She is the Stu of like the new movie and everything. But it's kind of like, this was just kind of tossed in on us out of nowhere. It's like, oh, okay, so you living in Stu's house. Any reason for that? And the thing is, we didn't know she was Ghostface at that time. So she was just a regular girl whose family happened to just move into the house, who happened to be part of like the friend group. There should have been a line of dialogue from one of the other friends group, like, how can you live in that house? Like, people died in that house. A mass murderer used to live in that house. And a line like that should have been given in the movie. Or her being all like, "Ugh, it's creepy living in this house. There's a mass murderer who used to live in this house." Something like that. You know what I'm saying? But it was just, oh, she just happened to live there, happened to throw a party, and same thing happened like in the first movie. And it was such a huge letdown. Now, another problem I had with Scream 6, and I said this in my review, is not utilizing New York. How do you set it in New York, but you don't do nothing spectacular? There was like no like good location sites. There were no like iconic location sites. And not to mention, Friday the 13th had Jason go to Manhattan. And this is just another like rip off and stuff. They just happened to go to New York and everything. And it didn't even really feel all like they was in New York because of the simple fact, other than like the bodega and the apartment and stuff like that, they could have been in any other city, and you'll never know it. You know what I'm saying? Because they didn't utilize their location. Like, the writers didn't say, "Hey, we want to go here or there." Maybe they did and they just got turned down. Who knows? But the director and the producers and stuff, they didn't like utilize the location of New York and stuff. I don't even think they filmed in New York. I think they filmed in a different city, I think. I can't remember which one though. Similarities between Scream 5 and the TV show, and a lot of fans have like picked this up, little small details like here and there. Like in Scream 5, Richie and Amber were like secretly dating, and they are the Ghostface couple. But in Scream, the television series season 1 and 2, you assume there's only one killer, but in Scream season 1, there was actually two. And it was a boyfriend-girlfriend couple. When the girl, who just happens to be the long-lost sister of Emma, which is a rip of Scream 3, her boyfriend, who's also dating Emma, avenges her death. And so it's like the first boyfriend-girlfriend, like, couple of, like, the Scream franchise, And then I think in like Scream Season 3, when did Scream Season 3 come out? 2019, I believe those two were secretly dating as well. I'm not 100% sure, but if so, okay, that's once again another like boyfriend-girlfriend couple that just happens to be that of Ghostface and everything. And not only that, but the two lives. There's one in season 3 and there's one in Scream 5. And the thing about Scream is that characters don't have the same names. Like normally if somebody's named something, that one character and that one character has that name. Not to mention Liv in season 3. Trying to think. What was Liv like? I forgot. Liv in season 3 of Scream. Was she the girl? Yeah, she was the girlfriend. She was the girlfriend of the final boy and everything. And there was a time in the show where you thought she was shady and could be Ghostface because she set her boyfriend up. Her dad's like a cop and everything. Then you have Scream 5. That's like you have Liv, who's just nice all throughout the movie. But then in that last act, she acts shady like she's the killer and everything. And it's just kind of like, it's almost like somebody at Paramount's like, hey, that television show that some people like and some people don't? Take a couple of inspirations from that. Or maybe the two writers happen to watch the show about like, hey, since this show got canceled and nobody's going to think about it, let's pluck a couple of stuff from here and there. You know what I'm saying? And it's just so funny to me and everything that they did that. Maybe it was just a coincidence. I don't know. But it is kind of weird. And Trying to think, were there any other like, similarities, I mean, both Scream 5 and the show have openly like lesbian characters. That's something that was new in the franchise. The whole final girl only being attacked because of like, well, no, actually, I don't know. Like, okay, now Emma is a rip of Sydney because the only reason why Ghostface is after both of them is because something their mom did. You know, like Marine Prescott and Mr. Loomis, Billy got pissed, and like the television show. Emma mom dated this guy. I think he had disfigurement. The town hated him for whatever reason, killed him, and the Ghostface killer has kind of like his distorted face or whatever. And I can't remember too much about it because I'm forgetting details of like the show and stuff like that. But then when it comes to Sam, the whole requel thing. Sorry about that. I thought for sure Richie would go after Sydney, but of course he never really did. And so it was only to recreate the killer reveal of like, the killer boyfriend being Ghostface, or the boyfriend being Ghostface, the killer. But here's the problem. In order for it to be a true requel and for to have everybody know and to love the Stab franchise once again, or to love that of the Woodsboro massacre again, people will have to know Richie's the killer. In order for that to work, they would have to know. So I still don't understand why exactly he targeted her. Like, it's just more incompetent writing, in my opinion. Heck, even the posters look very similar and everything. Like, the way the new Scream movies, DVDs and poster look, always having the entire cast like huddled around like in the middle and scattered around, and Ghostface like near them is very similar to that of the television show. And that light blue filter coloration and stuff. I mean, you can tell they really tried to like mimic certain aspects of the television show. Why did the OG like three characters just all stop talking to each other? Not sure if I brought this up before, but I'm about to bring it up again. It's kind of like, okay, I get the whole Gail and Dewey, they're divorced, they've moved on. Okay, fine. But why everybody else? Why did Gail stop talking to Sydney? And vice versa. Why did Sydney and Dewey stop talking? Vice versa, I know he feels like a loser and everything, but that should have been like for Gail. Like, you think in his time of despair, he would have talked to like, the only real friend he has and everything. But he doesn't, like, and it's just kind of like, why the distance? Why did Sydney move on with her life and not interact with the two people who, if it wasn't for Gail and Dewey, there are times she just wouldn't be alive, you know what I'm saying? And of course, we have to assume as fans, trauma and everything. Like, she just doesn't want to keep that baggage and everything from her past. And so she just deserted her friends and people move on. But it would have been nice to have one line of dialogue, because there was a deleted scene with Judy Hicks and Dewey, and it's kind of like, it would have been nice for them to have that scene, you know what I'm saying? Like, this dude has like nobody, Another thing that really pisses me off in Scream 5 is like how Sydney just recklessly shot through the doors trying to kill the killer. Like, why would she do that? Because she's bound to hit. What if she would have hit an innocent person? You know what I'm saying? Like, I guess Sydney is at the point where she's like, she doesn't care. She doesn't want to get killed by a ghost face. And she's just going to kill any living thing that comes in her way. But here's the problem. Ghostface wasn't even after her. Ghostface never really gave her a phone call, never sought after her or her kids or family. Like, Ghostface was after Sam and Sam friends. So it's like she goes to Stu's house, and every door that's closed, she just straight up tell people, "Hey, look, you got to count of 5 to come out, or I start shooting." And this is what she does. She just starts like, shooting through doors and hoping she would hit somebody and everything. And it's kind of like, well, if she didn't care if she shot and killed somebody, then when she opened the door to Richie, why did she hesitate not to shoot him? Even though she questioned, hey, why didn't you come out when I told you to and stuff? And you know what I'm saying? And it's just kind of like, then when she sees Ghostface and the knife goes down the stairs and he's trying to go down it, he's all like, it's a little hard because you shot me in the leg and blah, 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 and stuff like that. And it's just so reckless of her. Like, I don't get that whatsoever. What if she would have hit one of the twins or something like that? And she's supposed to be supposedly close with Randy's, like, niece and nephew and stuff. It was further. It's like they were trying to make her into a badass, but in my opinion, it's further pissing on the legacy characters and stuff, because that's really what they did in this entire movie and stuff. Speaking of Dewey, I'm sorry, but I do not like how he was handled in Scream 5. Like, I'm all for character development, and sometimes you gotta bring a character down and everything, right? But my God, man, they just like, yo, let's get meta and everything. Like, people hate, when they screw over legacy characters. Let's just screw this dude over big time, right? Let's have him lose his job. Let's have him grieve over like losing Gail. Let's have him be a drunk. He loses his home, has to live in the trailer. Like, he can't really pay his bills. His home looks like a mess inside, and he has completely just given up on everything and everyone, and he can't get over Gail, even to the point when he texts her, he's like, oh no, I should never put like a smiley emoji, and it's like, dude. Like, here's the thing about Dewey. He was always that bumbling idiot, but he was such a lovable guy in the earlier movies, right? And he became like the unsung like hero and the big older brother who look after Sydney and stuff like that, even though he's not related to her, and his sister used to treat him like crap. So he's always gone through it, but he's always risen to like, the occasion and stuff. And with like this movie, they just like brought this dude down to the ground, even to the point where originally he didn't want to help Sam out. And it's kind of like, what? But then I do like how they turned it around. They're like, okay, fine, I'm gonna help you and everything. But now I'm starting to think, did he have an ulterior motive for wanting to help Sam and all these new young people? Because he knew the moment Gail found out about a ghost face, she was going to be in town one way or another. Plus, remember, he contacted both her and Sydney. And of course, that brought Gail there. You know what I'm saying? And when he told Sydney, he told her, stay out of this. This ain't your fight, protect your family. He didn't say the same thing about Gail and everything, because they didn't talk on the phone. He just left her a message because he was hoping she would come, and bam, she did. So now I'm starting to wonder, did he help Sam and them because he wanted to be a hero again, or was it to get Gail to come back into town? And not only that, but the way he died, like a distraction. The phone call, like, come on, that's so Dewey Scream 1 and 2. You know what I'm saying? And not only that, but I do not believe for a second Amber has the strength to manhandle Dewey and kill him. They struggle way too long. And for her to have the strength to kill this dude with 2 knives, one in the gut, one in the back, and going up, no. I'm sorry. I don't believe that. I just don't. I just don't. Gail coping with Dewey's loss. She coped with it pretty well in like the fifth movie. She grieved and stuff like that. Because Ghostface is always coming after these characters, people don't really have time to grieve. I remember when Randy died, Sydney felt sad, but because he was just her friend and not like a loved one, she didn't grieve that long. Plus, that's when the cops told her, hey, it's time for you to get out the city and everything. Now, like I said before, Gail did cope pretty well in like the fifth movie, but then quickly like got over it. But then when you get to the sixth movie, my God, only a year has passed and she has completely moved on. Like she has a new boyfriend already. And it's just kind of like, I get it. Those two been divorced for many, many years. But for us, it hasn't been that long. And it's just kind of weird she would move on, after that dude died because the love for them fell out years ago. But then when he died, she grieved big time. Like, that was her best friend, like she said and stuff. And it's just she moved on so freaking quick with a new boyfriend after he died. It was just kind of like, it felt kind of soulless and heartless and stuff. And but then in Scream 7, they kind of addressed it a little more because they really didn't address it that much in the sixth movie. And we see she's popping pills and, she's has like a twitch now and everything from getting stabbed. And like, I think she does mention Dewey, it's like, okay, finally, you kind of like addressed him. But what kind of pills were she popping? Somebody, like a fan of the movie, said it might have been antidepressants, but we really don't know, you know what I'm saying? Like, it would have been nice to see her cope a heck of a lot more. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, when she was in the shrine, that should have been a big emotional thing for her. When she should have got Dewey's AI. When I heard that they were doing the whole AI thing and David Arquette was coming back, I thought for sure she would get a message with Dewey and just completely bawl. You know what I'm saying? But it was nothing like that. And it would have been nice to see that big emotional thing because they have re-ruined, like, the Gale character. In the fifth one, they fixed her so good that it's kind of like, finally, Gale is a human being and not just a rude queen bee. But then they turned her back to her roots and everything. Making Mindy into a stereotypical lesbian who has a problem with men. This could also just be modern Hollywood and everything. Like, in modern Hollywood, every female character you tend to see nowadays who's kind of like strong and everything, berates men in a certain degree. They have a problem, a disdain towards men for some reason. And there's always been that trope of like a lesbian being like a man hater and stuff, right? And the thing about Mindy is in all three movies she has appeared in, she has given guys grief. Let's start off with Scream 5. In Scream 5, she tells Amber the rules of like not splitting up and going down in the basement and you need a partner, this and that, right? They still get into it because Amber, of course, is the killer and she is like edgy and throwing shade. Okay, whatever. And she has a chip on her shoulder. That's just who Amber is, even though we really never seen that all throughout the rest of the movie. But like, she still is nice to Amber, Amber's scaring the crap out of her. Then when Richie wants to go down in the basement, he's all like, will you come with me? And she's all like, no, but I'm glad you asked because you're thinking about the rules. But no, I'm not going down there with you. And it's like, why not? Richie has never done anything wrong to that of like Mindy and everything. He's never been rude or anything. They never got into like an argument. And she just laid down the rules of going down in the basement and splitting up not too long ago. So why would she let him go by himself? It's because she has a problem with men. Then in the sixth movie, I forget the name of the brother killer. But all throughout the movie, she just like was mean to him. I bet you're a killer. You look like the killer type. Stay away from me, killer. And just being as rude can be to this guy. And especially when they was on the subway. And then when she got stabbed by Ghostface and he came to her rescue, she couldn't even say, hey, sorry for treating you this way, and blah, 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 right? And it's like, but then of course he turned out to be the real killer, so she kind of got that right. Then there is Scream 7 with Lucas, and she just kept looking at him, being all like, you're creepy, you're creepy, you're creepy. Like, you could be the killer and everything. You're creepy. And oh, the two people who disappear, they could be the killer, especially Creepy Boy and everything. And it's like, what is her deal with like guys? She just has a problem with men, but she treats all the females nice in the movie. And of course, she treats her brother nice because that's her brother. But it's just weird, man. Like, I don't get it. Like, why make her unlikable? I do not get it. Now, I have mixed feelings about Tara being mad at, like, Sam when she finds out the truth about the lineage and everything like that. Like, I don't know. Either Jenna didn't sell it or it felt a little rushed. I don't know, because it's kind of like, okay, Sam reveals, why Tara's dad abandoned and left her, right? Okay. It's because, the whole Billy Loomis being Sam's dad, and, and then Sam, like, acting out of control and stuff like that. So I understand, okay, that would upset anybody, you know what I'm saying? But I would have liked a little bit more context between Tara and her dad. Like, what if Tara, whatever it is, like, we now find out because she was so pissed off and didn't want to talk to her sister because of that, like, she must have really loved her father, right? And so that scene does show that okay, she cares about her father so much that she got pissed. But it's not Sam's fault, so why is she mad at Sam? If anybody, she should be mad at her mom. You know what I'm saying? Because it's her mom's fault and everything. But not only that, but it's like, but, like, what I was gonna say, I'm losing my train of thought here. So, okay, so she's mad at Sam for that and not her mom. But it would have been nice to have a little context to that. It would have been nice in the movie to hear Tara talk about her father and how she misses him, or just something like that. Or be like, hey, remember when we was younger, Dad used to take us here and there and do this. That would have been nice to have in the movie if you would have had a competent writer, you know what I'm saying? And because it's different from the whole Sydney thing. Sydney was really upset about her mom. She didn't like for nobody to talk bad about her mom. Her mom, she believed, was sexually assaulted and murdered and stuff. And the murder part, yes, we know, and everything. So that's completely different. And she saw the body. And if you watch Scream 3, you saw how much of a bloodbath that room was and everything, So I just don't understand why she took it out on Sam so much that she did. And then, of course, when Ghostface shows up and tries to, kill her and everything, then she just quickly forgives, her sister and stuff. And it would have been a nice setup if Tara would have, because, think about Scream 6 trailer, when Tara had that sinister look smirk on her face. That could have been it could have been like a Billy thing. Oh, my dad left and abandoned me because of what happened, what our mom did, and because and you're the result of that, and blah 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 blah. That would have been a great killer motive, but it still would have been just a ripoff of what Billy did, but still a whole lot better than the family in Scream 6. Now, I already talked about how Gail is barely in the last 3 movies, so I'm going to touch on more of the last scene when Sam just straight up abandoned like Tara. Once Amber was revealed to be the killer and she just started shooting up the place and killed like Liv and everything, everybody split up. And like she just straight up leaves Tara and goes with Richie. And then she's all like, oh no, my sister. And she goes back for her, or tries to, and Richie's all like, no. Like, what is she's like the killer? Think about it. She lured us here. But why did she abandon her sister to begin with? Her sister has a boot. She is on crutches. Not to mention she has a lot of nerve pain and a messed up hand because a knife went through it, and she has asthma. When they split up, grabbing her sister should have been the first thing she did and put her over her shoulder and ran with her. That's the whole reason why she came back to Woodsboro. That's the reason why she got pissed at that cop for not abandoning her sister at the hospital. Why in the world did she abandon her at the party when Amber started shooting up? That should have been her like main priority, was to save her sister's life. That was always the weirdest decision one of the weirdest decisions I saw in that whole movie. Then of course the cut scene is bizarre. It goes to outside to where Sydney and Gail shows up. They arm themselves, and then it goes back to the house, and Amber comes out and they don't believe her. And then all of a sudden, where the heck is Tara at? Amber managed to in that short time of Sam and Richie being down in the basement or wherever they was at, it's like Amber managed to tie Tara up that fast and stuff her behind in a closet. It was just it's always the most jarring scene in the whole movie, to where I'm all like, did I miss something? Because it feels like I missed something, like something was left out or something. Not having Billy's dad show up in Scream 5. How do you reveal out of nowhere that Billy had a love child, and that, Sam is around 24, 25, and there's no mention of the grandfather? What happened to Mr. Loomis? They've gone back to Woodsboro so many times, and yet this man has not been mentioned. He has not been seen. And you think Sam would probably want to reach out to her grandfather or something like that, or the grandfather want to reach out to her, since this was her movie and stuff. How do you leave a scene like that out? I don't understand that whatsoever. And not only that, but why couldn't in Scream 7, why couldn't Mr. Prescott be the one babysitting his two granddaughters and everything, instead of Mark's mother and stuff? It would have been nice to have a cameo from Mr. Prescott and everything. Cause we haven't seen that dude since Scream 3. That would have been just a nice nostalgia, and not a forced one with other stuff in that movie. The whole Guy Busick, was it Jill Roberts? Was that her name? And Emma Roberts, interview type thing. So Guy was asked why wasn't Jill in Scream 7? And he replied, I don't know anything about Emma, meaning the actress, or if she was contacted. Then he said Jill can't return because she was shot in the head. Okay, first of all, she wasn't shot in the head, she was shot in the chest by Sydney. Now, yeah, there's a good possibility she is dead. I mean, even if the doctors were to revive her, somebody has to know she's alive. The doctors, the police, she'll probably be in jail, this and that. But I don't think the interviewer meant alive. Why wasn't she part of the AI deep fakes? You know what I'm saying? Because you would think she would have been one of the main ghost face to mess with Sydney and everything, they left Billy out, they left Jill out, and why not bring the ones really, really closely related to her, just like they did with the others? Not only that, But like, he's the writer. If he so-called loves Jill, then why doesn't he just add her into the story and see if the studio will hire her and everything? Also, it's the three-way street. Kevin is the one who brought in Anna Camp. And, production and like, the studio, they can contact somebody in the past and bring them back. And I'm pretty sure him being the head writer and everything, if he really loved Jill and really wanted her back, and logically, since she is related to Sydney and her ghost face reveal was the most shocking, similar to that of Billy, Stu, and Mrs. Loomis and everything, out of all the ghost face reveals, those are the most, oh my God, like ghost face reveals like ever. Because nobody suspected Jill whatsoever. So why couldn't he pitch the idea? It's like this man is scared to pitch any kind of idea. Anna Camp even says she had to pitch certain ideas for her character and everything, because she was only supposed to have one scene in the movie before the ghost face reveal, and one scene only. And so what if he doesn't know anything about Emma Roberts? Like, that doesn't mean he can't like contact her or her agent or something like that. And not only that, but he doesn't even know how Jill died. And he's the writer of the Scream franchise. He's supposed to go back and look at all these past movies. I mean, we know he's all about nostalgia and everything. I'm sorry, 3 strikes, this man needs to be out. I'm not the only person saying that, okay? Like, I'm not. This man has had one too many chances when it comes to Scream, and he just doesn't need to write no more. Like, he just seriously really doesn't. This is just bad writing. See, I am allergic to bad writing. See, it's like all like stuffy in my nose, and it makes me all sick, and it gives me like a high fever and everything when they do like the bad writing. I just can't take it. And so this is my gripe. This is my rant. Like, this is my frustration with these 2 writers, to the point where I just can't take it no more. Now, one has left the franchise, and I'm not sure why. He might return in the future, heck if I know. But then there's still one lingering around, and that's Guy Busick. And I don't hate Guy Busick, and I don't hate James Vanderbilt at all. But the problem I'm having with both of them is the simple fact is that their writing is very incomplete. There's not a whole lot of logic behind it. Like, here's the thing about Kevin Williamson. He does an amazing job writing the Scream movies, but like, he's not perfect either. But the thing about him that can give him a pass is that a lot of his flaws are very minor in the franchise. Yeah, people still ask like, why did this happen, or why did this person do that? But they're very minimum. That's the thing. The thing about him is that he will hammer things out. In Scream 4, it did get a little sloppy with some of the writing, because, it's been over 11 years, and they really wanted that nostalgia of the first movie, so a lot of things felt rushed, and a lot of things, like Jill being alive at the end of the movie, Sydney having amnesia, Jill going off to college, and there's a Ghostface who knows that she is actually Ghostface and starts terrorizing her, kind of like a vigilante type thing. That would have been so new, so fresh, but I guess the studio rejected that or something like that. But nevertheless, his flaws are very, like, minimum. You know what I'm saying? And of course, he did not write Scream 3. So it's just kind of like, I can give him a pass on certain things. You know what I'm saying? But these 2 writers, it's just, you watch these movies, and after you watch them, whether you enjoy them or not, you just stop and you constantly ask, why the heck did this happen? How did this person find out about this? Why do I have to use my brain to think outside the wall and everything? And that was the job of like the writers. And so it's one of these things where the writing is on the wall, literally. And I just feel like they need a new perspective, new writing team and everything. Somebody who sits down and think of point A to point B to point C without throwing in a D, a E, a F, and every other letter in the mix of A, B, and C. You know what I'm saying? That bad writing like some stinky milk, man. When that milk get all stanky and everything and all chunky, you gotta throw it away. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.